This video covers Period 2 of the AP US History exam, Gold, God, and Glory. In this video, we'll be covering the key concepts for Period 2 of the AP curriculum from 1607 to 1754, or from the founding of the first successful English colony at Jamestown through the years just before the Revolutionary War. As in Period 1, the first key concept to remember is that the stereotypical story of early America is far from complete. Not only were there many complex civilizations already existing when Europeans began colonizing the New World, but not all colonists were pilgrims on the Mayflower, and the story of John Smith and Pocahontas may not have been as romantic as we've been told. Let's start with the first key concept for this era, the theme of gold. Differences in imperial goals, local cultures, and the North American environments that different empires confronted led Europeans to develop diverse patterns of colonization and what became a massive grab for land and riches on the North American continent. Here's how this colonial push breaks down. The English were populating from Massachusetts to Virginia, Spain was colonizing much of California and the Southwest, France was creating colonies and trading hubs in both Louisiana and Canada, and the Dutch took control of New Amsterdam, modern-day New York. We have to ask, why would they be so aggressive in their attempt to control so many parts of the New World? What were their primary motivations? The primary motivation was money. The Europeans' insatiable hunger for gold motivated Spanish colonial efforts, the mercantile or the distribution of trade of goods and services for the Dutch, trapping and trading for the French, and a new permanent home for English religious dissenters. To do this, they used extraordinarily cheap, meaning free, large-scale labor systems. These came in the form of the encomienda system and missions in Spanish colonies, plantations and slavery in the West Indies and the American South, indentured servitude in the Middle and North Atlantic, and trapping and export companies with Indian assistance in the French territories. We must note, the failure of the indentured servitude system and changes in attitude and sense of racial superiority led to increased English plantation society reliance on African slavery. As for every aspect of this study guide, there is an array of excellent documents that will lend depth to your knowledge and help you build a vast accessible body of evidence for different parts of the exam. Be sure to check out John Winthrop Describes Life in Boston in 1634 and A Jamestown Settler Describes Life in Virginia in 1622. This brings us to our second key concept, the theme of God. Remember, religion was one of the most constant and important things for many of these peoples. It dictated their decisions and gave them a sense of superiority as they plowed into the territories of the New World. Many colonists came from Europe to freely practice their chosen religion, without the fear of persecution. Although this may seem like a peaceful move, their devotion was not always absent of fear and uncertainty. With this religious zeal came a great deal of worry. Why does my livestock continue to die off? It couldn't have been bovine disease, it must have been the work of Satan. Why did my first 2 children die before the age of 2? Are we sinners in the hands of an angry God? To say the least, devout belief in their chosen religious structures dictated a great deal of their thinking as colonists moved forward in the development of new American settlements in different parts of North America. It is also worth noting, in the Caribbean, slaves held on large plantations where they had strength in numbers began to revolt or run away to self-sustained communities. The news of these incidents fostered fears of revolt in the mixed slave and working-class white societies in New York and other settlements along the eastern seaboard. Along with these revolts, Indian wars and economic unrest also spawned religious fear, for example the Salem witch trials, and religious revival, a good example being the Great Awakening. Some documents you could use to bolster your understanding of this include the New York Conspiracy of 1741, a slave revolt in the West Indies in 1733, the province of Massachusetts Bay requests aid from Queen Anne in 1708, and a revival of religious fervor in 1744. This brings us to our third key concept, the theme of glory. As the colonies got more profitable, their imperial sponsors wanted greater control of the profits and trade systems, and colonists began to resent interference from absentee rulers. Everyone, from monarchs to the common people, were interested in some kind of glory. It could have been a king, ensuring his legacy as a powerful ruler, and one that had vast holdings around the world. Maybe it was creating a self-sustaining community focused on living a life based on Puritan doctrine. We must remember that the conflict really resided in how the glory would be achieved and at what cost. As the new and old worlds began to clash, Enlightenment thinking made its way across an increasingly busy Atlantic Ocean, carried by printed materials and people. This would prove to be a recipe that, when cooked just right, would separate these worlds forever. This brings us to our second skills focus, the short answer questions. The second type of AP test skill we're covering is the short answer. These will account for 20% of your score, and you'll have 45 minutes in which to answer 4 questions. We recommend spending about 10 minutes per question, and that will give you some time to review your answers at the end. Remember, there is no time to waste on this section, so get right into it and make sure you have time to check your answers. It is crucial to remember that the short answer questions will directly address one or more of the thematic objectives of the course. So here's a refresher of the 7 historical themes: identity, work, exchange and technology, peopling, politics and power, America and the world, environment and geography, and ideas, belief, and culture. Each short answer question will provide a document, map, graph, picture, historian's argument, or general proposition about American history. You'll need to draw on the historical thinking skills you've been developing throughout the year to craft a good answer. According to the AP, you'll be able to choose among several questions to highlight your knowledge. Here's an example of a real short answer question. You'll see that the instructions are pretty explicit, but don't be fooled by the word short. Make sure that you complete all 3 aspects of the question, not just one. Answer A, B, and C. A. Briefly explain why one of the following option most clearly marks the beginning of the sectional crisis that led to the outbreak of the Civil War: the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, the Missouri Compromise of 1820, and the acquisition of Mexican territory in 1848. B. Provide an example of an event or development to support your explanation. C. Briefly explain why one of the other options is not as useful to mark the beginning of the sectional crisis. So here's the trick. There is no correct answer. It's up to you to choose and then support your choice with a concrete example and a reason one of the other options wasn't what you chose. A good response will skillfully make the argument for your choice using supporting evidence from the historical events and developments and cover all aspects of the question. This is why it is a good idea to review all the questions first and then choose those about errors and arguments which you feel most comfortable.